and a couple Psalms, but we'll get to all that. It'll all fit together. You notice that Psalm 37 doesn't get a little blue part, so that's your memory work. Add that into your reading through the week. Life lessons. Are they important? Some things that you just need to learn in order to get through. Doesn't matter if you're 3 or 103. How about this one? Life is not fair. Does that ever go away? Do 3-year-olds struggle with that? Or 2 or 1? Not you, of course. Other people struggle with this question. Life is not fair. That lesson can really get under our skin, because when we're saying this, we're saying, I didn't get what I wanted. Very rarely do we use this when we say, life's not fair because I have so much more than you. That's not fair, is it? It's usually, I don't have as much as you, or I wanted more, or I'm struggling with. How come you have this and I don't have that? Life is not fair. Why do they have to go to bed when life is not fair? It's a life lesson. It's one of those things that we have to learn. But Jesus fills our thirst for understanding, even for understanding the question of, why isn't life fair? What happens when other people seem to be blessed and you're not? The question that we're going to take a look at is, why do the wicked seem to prosper? Does that seem fair? You serve God. You try to do the right thing. It doesn't always end up the right way. People that ignore God, people that really would spit in his face, seem to have a much easier life than sometimes that we have. It's not fair. Why do the wicked seem to prosper? Let's see if you are behind the struggle in these words. I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong. They are free from the burdens common to man. They are not plagued by human ills. Therefore, pride is their necklace. They clothe themselves with violence. From their callous hearts come iniquity. The evil conceits of their minds know no limits. They scoff. They speak with malice. In their arrogance, they threaten oppression. Their mouths lay claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. There's no end to how terrible, how rotten. Their mouths lay claim to heaven. They say, that's mine too. And their tongues take possession of the earth. They seem to have everything. And because they seem to have everything, and they get away with everything, therefore their people turn to them and drink up waters in abundance. They say, how can God know? Does the Most High have knowledge? This is what the wicked are like. This is what the wicked are like. Always carefree. They increase in wealth. You have any sense of that passage? Any time in your life where you can say, that frustrates me? Why do they get away with it? Those are the first 12 verses of Psalm 73 on page 909. Written by Asaph. Possibly when Hezekiah was praying for deliverance from Sennacherib in 2 Kings 19, 14 through 19. And you remember this, he sends a letter. Sennacherib sends a letter. He humiliates him in front of the people. He tells them God can't help them at all. Hezekiah needs to know, does God care? Are the evil really going to prosper? Is there any value in being righteous? Or are we just going to get wiped out anyways? That seems to be the background from when this was happening. Back then, all the way back in this psalm, which was 710 BC, about that time, the wicked seem to prosper, and it can seem the same way today, can't it? There are times when we thirst to understand this. And we thirst to understand the related questions. Like, where is God when I need him? Maybe you haven't asked the question, you don't struggle with why do the wicked seem to prosper, but this one touches close to home. Where is God when I need him? Or why doesn't God do something about? You fill in the blank. It's been your frustration. There's something in your life you just wonder, why doesn't God answer my prayer? Why didn't I get this? Why doesn't he take care of that? Is there no justice? Abby, that's a good question, right? She's very justice-oriented. Is there no justice? Are they really going to get away with this? It's the plot of about half the TV shows. Is there no justice? Can they get away from this? Really? But there's several versions of the same idea, but it's when we struggle to understand. Because it's hard to understand what God is doing when we have to wait for an answer. In particular, when we have to wait for an answer that's going to come after our lifetime. All the way back in 7:10, Asaph figures it out. We read the first 12 verses, but we're going to come back to it because he figures it out. He sees something that makes it click. To understand, that's why this happens. This is when it's going to be made right. Jesus provides an understanding by teaching through the parables. When we thirst for understanding these types of questions, God does provide an answer. But he provides it in a parable. Because in a parable, you relate to the people in the story. If he just tells you, you can just seem, argumentative. But when you see it in a parable, you realize, oh, it does make sense. And then you can get behind it. Guess what the parable is? The wheat and the weeds. Do the two grow together? Unfortunately. The wheat and the weeds. They do. The good and the bad, do they happen simultaneous in your life? Is it always all good or all bad? No, it's the wheat and the weeds. They happen at once. So why doesn't God do something about it? Well, let's see what he has to say. Matthew 13, 24 through 30. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. Everything looked fine. He sowed good seed, didn't he? Did he sow any weed seeds? Not intentionally. But when things start to mature, they both come up. The owner's servant came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field?" And then here is the question of gardening. Right, Ella? Where did the weeds come from? I know I planted carrots. I know I planted beets. I did not plant weeds. But where are they? Who planted these weeds? Who did this to my garden? In verse 28, an enemy did this, he replied. The servant asked him, "Did you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because." Why? "While you're pulling up the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them." Why do good and bad exist at the same time? Why doesn't God just rip it out? Because while you're pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. But is God ever going to take care of the weeds? Is he ever going to remove the negative from your life, the struggles? But let them both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. Both sides are going to be taken care of. So here's my object lesson. Ella didn't realize this was an object lesson. 2 months ago, I started this object lesson. I didn't tell her it was an object lesson. I had the idea. No, I didn't. I just didn't go and weed my garden. This is my garden. I can't even blame the kids. They didn't do it. I'm the only one that has not tended this garden. This is about 2 months of growth. And she said, if you want to find potatoes, go do weeding. But I thought, hey, if I pull the weeds, what's going to happen to my garden? And about 15 minutes later, that's what it looked like. But guess what happened? When I pulled the grass, I lost some potatoes because the grass had just gripped right around them. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. There's other parables that remind us, don't let the weeds hang out because they will choke you and make you unfruitful. So there is a time and a way to do weeding. But once they're established, you run the risk of losing. So God says, you know what? I will take care of things, but I'll do it in my time. He explains this parable in verse 36. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. He answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom, and the weeds are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. At this point, we have all of the characters. We have all the people in this illustration, and we know all of their parts. We still don't know why they're doing what they're doing, but we know who's playing what parts. And then in 40 through 43, as the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. That little passage there, everything that causes sin, you realize none of that will make it into the kingdom? Anything that would even tempt you to do anything wrong, none of it is allowed to be there. And all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. Anyone have ears? Jesus said it then. We have ears today. It's a helpful teaching. When we struggle with understanding what's up, why do the wicked prosper? Why is there no justice? Those related questions, a parable like this can help us, because as we're learning about a gardener in weeds, we're not thinking he's going to say, I'll take care of it at the end. Because if he just says, I'll take care of it at the end, you might have a lot more questions. A perfect separation is coming. Do you believe that? There will come a time in our physical time frame within the history of mankind when there will be a perfect separation. Not a partial separation, not a mechanical separation, a perfect separation. No one who belongs to God will be lost. Amen? That's the part we like. No one who belongs to God will be lost. He will reclaim every last kernel of wheat. Every one. Won't lose one. What's the other side of it? Nobody sneaks in. Not one who has rejected God will be spared. He knows every wheat and every weed. It's a perfect separation. The parable of the net in verses 47 through 50 show the same thing about knowing which fish to keep. One of the key teachings in this is that God is paying attention. We may not think that he is, we may not act like he is, but God is paying attention. And that's the answer that helps us understand these big questions about the wicked seeming to prosper. God is paying attention. This is not getting past him. God knows what's happening. He is patient, but one day he will take care of it. So how do we handle it in the meantime? How do we live in this dichotomy, this world with both weeds and wheat? How do we do it within our own lives, knowing the good within us and our tendency for sin? How do we do it in the society around us? How do we do it waiting for a final judgment and being concerned about a final judgment because we know that there will be a lot that are lost that think they're saved, and knowing that God doesn't lose any of his? Well, what helped Asaph in this? He goes through this transitional discussion, starting in verse 13. Surely in vain have I kept my heart pure, in vain I have washed my hands in innocence. When he was looking at how the evil seemed to prosper, he looks at his life and he says, faith is kind of stupid. Well, maybe if they get everything that they want, it's vain to keep your heart pure. It's vain to wash your hand of innocence. Maybe I should be more like them. Maybe that's what I want in life. All day I've been plagued. I've been punished every morning. If I had said I will speak thus, I would have betrayed your children. When I tried to understand all this, it was oppressive to me. Because that's what I kind of thought, but then I thought, no, that's not right to think that way. Righteousness is of value. So what reminds him that righteousness has value is verse 17. He was thinking that maybe I should be more wicked. Maybe I should join that lifestyle. Maybe I should fit in more and enjoy that. Until verse 17, till I entered the sanctuary of God. And once I was before God and I worshiped. Once I was looking at God in eternity, then I understood their final destiny. And it didn't matter how much they prospered here. It didn't matter how easy their life was. It didn't matter how much I struggled. It didn't matter that I questioned my faith and the value of it. When I looked at it against eternity, I said, this is the right way. It doesn't matter. Be faithful. Play the long one. Asaph figured that out 710 years BC. So the psalm goes on to say, if we realize that faith is about not just this life, but eternity, then what? We see his struggle going through that. Now speaking to God, he says, yet I am always with you. You hold me by my right hand. So God, if it's the world or you, I'm with you. I want to hold your hand. You will safely cross the street with me. You will take care of me. If it's the world or you, I know where I'm going. If being in your sanctuary, if worshiping you teaches me anything, it should be faithful to God. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me into glory. See, life is better here because you guide me now and you have eternity. You'll take me into your glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? That's where you are. That's where I want to be. The other side of it, about being heavenly minded, is what values the earth. And earth has nothing I desire beside you. We have people here. We have relationships. But if they're invested in heaven, if we're showing people how to be right with God, if we know we're going to end up in eternity together, the earth has nothing to offer. If he comes, he comes. And we're ready. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Those who are far from you will perish. You destroy all who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge. I will tell of all your deeds. 3 promises that he offers God in the end. It is good to be near you. I have made you my refuge, and I will tell of your deeds. If this is true, if God will separate the weeds and the wheat, then those 3 things are important. Be near God, he's your refuge, and tell of his deeds. Psalm 37 talks about the same struggle, but it starts from the other perspective by saying, you know that it's right. Don't fall into the temptation of envying the wicked. Don't even do it. Don't start there. Here's the blessings of being faithful. And so it's a psalm that I included because of the connection to what we're going through today. So how do we apply a lesson like this? This combination of the weeds, the wheat, Psalm 73. How about life is not fair? Have you learned that already? Life is not fair, and because of that, focus on the truth that God will make things right. Is that something we can do? If life isn't fair anyways, still trust that God will make it right. You don't have to bring your own justice. Tell others of how good God is and what he has to offer. When people around us are struggling with why do the wicked seem to prosper? You're a Christian? Yeah, because it has an eternal benefit. This is what God has to offer. It may seem difficult, but it is worth anything and everything. Avoid the mind trap of envying the wicked. Isn't it a mind trap? You start looking at others and what they have rather than looking at what you have or how you have more than others. It's what you focus on, the direction of your heart and the direction of your mind. Avoid the mind trap by avoiding comparison because it's a joy killer. Did you read that somewhere? It's on the front side. That one looks pretty good, doesn't it? Looks like a lot more wheat than weeds. But can you guarantee there's weeds in there? Sure there is. Their life might look easy, but it's not. Keep faith focused in the day-to-day. Isn't that important? If you're struggling with this, just stay faithful. Stay faithful in the day-to-day and serve God wholeheartedly. Think of the end when the middle's the struggle. Be ready for judgment. Be as ready as you can be and help others be ready as well, because we know absolutely 100% that it's coming. We don't know when, but we know. So we maintain relationship. The wise and the foolish, the lamps, we're ready. And part of that is helping others be ready. To apply this, I think we need to get to this step too. Come out of the world. Take that time to just get out of that mindset. Come out of the world and worldly thinking. Enter the sanctuary. When you come with other believers, leave that behind. Initiate and enjoy spiritual discussion. Focus on eternity. Talk about faith and the value of faithfulness. Even talk about the struggles of faithfulness, and then encourage one another to stay faithful. If you don't have that and your mind's always stuck in the world, it's easy to envy the wicked and turn away from God. And the last thing is the important thing. Thank Jesus for the hope that we have in him and because of him. If you're having a struggle, times in our lives, if we're wondering about these big questions, is it worth it to be faithful? Yes. And God, through Jesus, has given us everything that we need to be faithful. And we thank you for the hope that we have in Jesus and that he's invested us for the long term, and we can return the benefit. Next week we're going to start to talk about, this is the last of the scheduled sermons, and I've made a slight adjustment to it. Through this series we've been talking about our thirst for. But I think if we're going to thirst for the kingdom, it's an acquired thirst. It's not necessarily natural for people to think of God-focused living, but it is an acquired thirst that reminds us of the benefit. And so we're going to be looking at a number of these passages as well.